Hello everybody, I'm Zachary Mars here, and this is my presentation on video game NPC AI powered by Local LLMs. Making smarter, more natural characters in video games. Imagine adventures with limitless possibilities and unique characters who feel truly intelligent. Large language models, or LLMs, have undergone rapid advancement in recent years, leading to an explosion of new opportunities across many domains, but also creating concerns for consumers and executives alike. People across the world use freemium LLM services like ChatGPT or Grok to assist with everyday tasks and learning. LLMs can also be used to create dynamic, responsive non-player characters, or NPCs, in video games, to make dialogue more engaging and surprising. Traditional game NPCs rely on pre-scripted dialogue in the form of dialogue trees, which is often criticized as stale and lacking in social depth. LLM advancements have made NPCs in games able to engage in open-ended natural language conversations and interactions, raising player expectations for richer and more emotionally engaging player experiences. So why are local LLMs powered NPCs interesting, relevant, or game-changing for video game developers? Well, LLMs can field more believable dynamic reactions from NPCs, which increases player immersion, increases willingness to play, and increases the potential for game replayability. Video game developers work hard to keep player attention and engagement, and increasing a game's ability to deliver on player engagement and replayability is invaluable for stakeholders in the video game industry. Furthermore, by loading LLMs locally onto the user's PC, these games can be played dynamically offline at any time with these NPCs, and they're using more complex LLMs nowadays to fuel even more complex and original character interactions, largely in live simulation and role-playing games. It's becoming increasingly popular for such games with scripted dialogue, such as Animal Crossing or Skyrim, to get mods with NPCs that use LLMs to fuel original character interactions. While there are currently limitations and some difficulty controlling the narrative with these NPCs, the technology has potential to create games that appeal to players in new ways and drastically improve the nature of NPC reaction and character interactions with video games, with some careful curation. So how does this technology change, and how does it change human behavior and organizational practices? According to an exploratory study on LLM-driven NPCs in the game Stardew Valley, researchers found that NPCs can enrich interaction and single-player gameplay, particularly in designs that complement existing gameplay dynamics and social relationships. Stardew Valley is a farming simulator and sandbox game where exploration, adventure, and social interaction with the local villagers are all optional and valid ways to interact with the game. One thing the study revealed is that new players to the game were more interested in the AI interactions, while experienced players felt that the AI interactions broke immersion with the world based on their expectations and knowledge from previous gameplay. Another interesting revelation of the study was that when players played online together, they were less inclined to interact with the LLM-powered NPCs, finding their human co-op player more active and psychologically closer to themselves, and thus they were less interested in interacting with the AI NPCs in that context. The context is important, and understanding how player interactions and dynamics will be affected by this sort of technology is vital to understanding its future. In wider online settings, players are more prone to trying to break and test the limits of LLM responses, which can further break gameplay and immersion and presents a plethora of ethical issues. The presence of other human players tends to dominate the bandwidth, so LLM-powered NPCs in some online contexts could be wasteful. While using them to onboard new players to a new single-player experience, it would be demonstrably easier and more effective use. So why is this a potential strategic technology to track in the game industry? Well, it's still getting its foothold, but it's a technology that really raises the bar for player expectations as to what a game can mean and be. As the technology progresses, companies that are able to understand how to implement it effectively will be able to create game experiences that are new and unlike anything we've ever seen in video games before. It's an opportunity to reach players on a fundamentally deeper level and create experiences that feel spontaneous, characters that feel authentic and real rather than scripted and rigid. creating hybrid systems that bridge dialogue tree systems and scripted dialogues with LLM originality presents opportunities to leverage LLMs within a structured framework, and helps address issues of pacing and context within the narrative that can arise using LLM characters. Emergent behaviors create new gameplay situations which are fascinating and have a high potential for new player engagements. Rapid maturization and advancement means that games developers should keep a close eye on how this technology advances over the next coming years. Use cases and audience. Games with a highly social aspect, like RPGs and detective games, are a better use than other types of video games, like first-person shooters, for example. According to Julian Togelius, the director of NYU's Game Innovation Lab, popular games like Doom, Quake, and Wolfenstein wouldn't really benefit from using AI. Especially the LLM AI. The target audience is generally more for social gamers, but also one who enjoys single-player narratives. Slice of life games like Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley, A Meme Town, and RPGs like the Skyrim Mandela mod and Wanderfolk are highly prominent use cases, which have been highly successful at engaging users and exciting gamers. These mods have been met with praise from many, although the technology is still in its early phases and it's still seen as somewhat of a gimmick. LLM-driven NPCs are best utilized in a single-player context, with players who are fueled by and engaged with the conversations with the AI, as opposed to somebody who's just trying to mess around with it. In multiplayer online settings, most players find that they prefer real human interaction and tend to try to break the AI, which can be useful for helping to address faults in the technology, but it has proven risky for online companies like Epic Games with their famous Fortnite fiasco with the Darth Vader NPC. A lot of players got it to say some pretty inappropriate things, and that obviously raised a lot of concerns for parents. Zork-style text adventure games and chat-based games are becoming increasingly popular with web implementations of the LLMs for video game and NPC AI with web LLM-produced technology. So who are some of the major players? The major LLM models right now are GPT, Llama, Codex, and BERT. And a recent study, or a review of 76 different studies in the industry, found that about 85% of the games are using these models. The game developer Astrobeam developed Stellar Cafe on MetaQuest, where game players use hand tracking to interact with objects and their voice to speak with LLM-fueled AI robots who help them solve problems in a stellar cafe. This game's powered by Gemini 2.5 Flash, DeepGram, and InWorld. That's another big model, is the InWorld model for these LLM character interactions. Which LLMs enable these characters to have each have their own distinct personalities and speech patterns in the game, which is really interesting. Ubisoft is another big player in the field. They're collaborating with NVIDIA's Audio Two-Face and InWorld's LLM to release an RPG prototype called Neo NPC. NVIDIA is also working on ACE, or the Avatar Cloud Engine, a generative AI platform to deliver AI NPCs, which includes game titles such as Inzoi, INZOI, and a hack and slasher called Naraka Blade Point, where they'll have an ally whose reactions and responses are fueled by LLMs. A Meme is the maker of a game called A Meme Town. It's like another little anime slice of life game with LLM NPCs. So the current market state and the 5-year projection. While the LLMs have advanced a long way, there's still need for improvements, and many current games that still use them have consistency issues. It's a little bit funny, but the behavior can be game-breaking too. Sometimes LLMs can lose scope and focus. Aside from actual errors, they can be a distracting feature for players. When traditional dialogue trees are torn down in favor of essentially an LLM for each NPC, you may find some players getting a little lost on their way to finding what they need to move on. Says Jason England, managing editor of Computing at Tom's Guide. Indie game developers using Unity can use the LLM Unity package to set up LLM NPCs in their own games with just a few lines of code. So the doorway for new and smaller players to start using these LLMs to make their NPCs is fortunately very low. It's very, very accessible. There's web-based packages which are easy to access. There's the Unity package, which gives you a wide variety of models to choose from. So there's a lot that you can do to start hitting the ground running, setting up LLM NPCs in your own game. With LLMs getting smaller in size and quantization method pushing this size even smaller, Recent PCUs and GPUs, recent computers can run these LLMs locally on their own machines using less than 7 gigs of RAM. So pretty much any modern PC nowadays, if it's kind of made for gaming especially, should easily be able to handle the technology without needing to use cloud-based computing, without needing to use a lot of resources, without the data centers, all just running on local machines. It also is, I'll go over this in it, there's a lot of benefits to that. Currently, players can engage with groups of about 5 to 10 NPCs at the same time in the Skyrim Mantella mod. These NPCs will even approach the player to initiate conversation themselves. They'll group up together and interact to respond to each other, and they'll even respond to nearby actions like the death of other characters. So what's the next 5 years going to look like for this technology? Well, this year we're going to start to see more and more hybrid systems, that's dialogue tree systems being integrated with LLM variety, trying to bridge the gap in the technology there a little bit with the existing technology to bring more structure to it. I believe we're going to see a lot more of these games in the coming year, especially because one of the biggest limitations at the moment with the technology is that it can get a little bit lost and wandering and have hallucinations and artifacts and reveal inappropriate information at the wrong time according to the game rules, things like that. So there's still a lot of working out the rails, and so a dialogue tree system with LLM NPCs and a limited capacity will sort of bridge the gap in the coming year. In 2027, we're looking at NPC gossip. So we're going to have NPCs, and we already have a little bit of this with this game called Wanderfolk. There's other games that explore it a little bit too. But the idea is these NPCs, they won't just talk about other things around you. They won't just have original responses. They'll actually remember things about the player, remember things about their choices, and they'll gossip about the player and ideally even other NPCs to each other. They'll start talking about other parts of the game world and remembering things and having conversations, almost like a real person would. Moving on, in 2008 and 2009, we're going to start seeing the technology come into maturity, a lot of these issues getting resolved. We're going to see more and more indie games and mods with the level of accessibility increasing and the language models getting smaller. There's going to be a boom of explosion of creative new games that use the LLM models to make new game mechanics, to make new character types, to find ways to leverage the technology in new ways, and also to refine it so that there's less hallucinations, less error, less off-theme, off-topic conversations with these NPCs. So 2029 here is probably when we'll see actual maturity of and acceptance, wide-scale acceptance of the technology. They'll be more robust and able to stay on task better, less exploits from potential players. These will be shielded against better with better training. The appeal of the technology will become broader as the LLMs move away from data centers. There'll be less ethical concerns. There'll be more and more acceptance of it as a real game technology and an advancement as opposed to like a gimmick or something to play with on the side. Right now it's kind of being seen as a toy, and I'm seeing that going away. And then modding communities will continue to convert existing dialogue tree games that are static and narrative driven. They'll continue to mod them and convert them to add these NPCs in to kind of bring in that technology to games that don't already have them. By 2030, 2031, we'll start to see more and more single-player experiences, and then finally branching out into more multiplayer online experiences. Even though this isn't the ideal application of the technology, would probably start to see a lot more of that. A lot more games and AAA companies applying it on a mass level on multiplayers, having companions and sidekicks online, and NPCs in online games who use this technology in a more compartmentalized way. And finally, with 2031, we'll see free-form games that completely take advantage of the technology. The indie games becoming even more popular, the AAA titles, because of the positioning and creative implementation of this technology. I believe indie games are really going to thrive with it. And we'll see real free-form interactions with NPCs. They'll feel genuine interaction, create a sense of a cast in a game world that's living and breathing and doing unique things and thinking. That's sort of the real illusion of life, is these characters seem to actually think for themselves and don't just respond to a character in input X, get output Y. You know what I mean? Okay, and that brings us to some concerns, ethical concerns, legal concerns, social response to the technology. What are some of the issues that arrive with the use of LLMs in video games for NPC responses? Well, the first one is plagiarism. Unfortunately, LLMs can be trained from a wide variety of data. I mean, that's not always unfortunate, but what is unfortunate is that sometimes it steals content. It can take a unique author's writing, characterization, etc., and use that to derive its own responses and information. Obviously, plagiarism is unethical. It raises legal issues. You can get your game company sued, and gamers don't respond well to plagiarism. They don't like to find out that the AI is stealing. And so anyway, you can get the AI not to steal, make content that trained it in a different way, maybe, I don't know, but that is one of the main concerns. Another major concern, especially with cloud-based solutions, is the resource usage. Extensive requests are not scalable, and so big data centers are necessary to fuel LLM services like ChatGPT and things like that. So that's a big reason why we're moving towards local LLMs, I believe, in games. And with the libraries and the technologies getting smaller, it's becoming something that we don't necessarily need to use as much electricity and resources, at least on a large scale. That's something that can be deferred to local computer resources. That's still energy usage, but it's not the same as using like a major data center. And the third concern are AI hallucinations. AI can make the mistake of inventing false information. In a game context, this isn't super important as, if you're looking at medical information, for example, or legal information and it's wrong, right? But it can still be bad in a game context. They could be revealing information the player shouldn't know yet. They could be revealing information the character shouldn't know, things like that, and that can break immersion, break the rules of the game, things like that. These are things that can be hard to control with LLM responses. And then players can also exploit LLMs to deliberately create hallucinations or deliberately create offensive responses to try to get the AI to say something funny or stupid or horrible. So these are things we have to look out for. All right, and that brings us to Q&A time. Since I'm going to be doing my video asynchronously, I'm not going to be able to actually field questions. So what I've done is I prepared a few what I thought would be very common questions, things that people would likely want to know more, not knowing a whole lot about the topic. So let's dive into that. Question 1, how can indie and solo game developers incorporate large language models into their NPC dialogue? So how can you actually apply it? Question 2, why are locally hosted LLMs favorable to cloud-based solutions? I touched on that a little bit already, but I'll go into just some quick baseline details about why it's much, much preferable to be hosting these locally than to try to do a cloud-based solution. And question 3, how are LLM NPC AI issues like hallucinations, lack of focus, or immersion-breaking dialogue being addressed within the industry? So first of all, question 1, some packages you can use is LLM Unity for Unity game developers. It's one of the most easy, accessible game engines for indie game developers. It's free to use, and there's a package called LLM Unity. You can just go to the package manager in Unity, you download it. With a few lines of code, you can get started and choose a LLM model and start making NPCs or whatever the heck you want with it. It's pretty amazing. If you want to do something outside of the game engines, there is a web-based service called Codex Local. They said they are built on web LLM, and you can do the same thing. You can make this is especially good for like chat-based games. You want to make like a character chat interaction thing, something like Zork, but with AI. You could easily make it with this Codex Local service. So those are two things I would check out if you're an indie game developer. You want to do LLM NPCs. And both of these, I believe, have ways of supporting local LLM libraries rather than relying on cloud-based solutions. Then another great advantage, okay, and we'll go into that too. So question 2 to review again was why are locally hosted LLMs favorable to cloud-based solutions? The answer is scalability, resource reduction, and privacy. Cloud-based solutions are not scalable. They lead to this huge resource problem we have now. They lead to crashes and
all kinds of issues. It's just when you have lots of people doing these complex LLM requests, the scalability just goes out the window. And we found that through multiplayer interaction, it's not even that desirable in a large scale online anyway. Resource reduction is a big one. That's a huge ethical issue. We kind of covered that already. And then another one's privacy. If you're not sending LLM requests online, they can't be hacked, they can't be scraped. They're just on your local machine, so they're a lot safer, they're a lot more private, a lot more protected. Yeah. Okay, so, and that takes us back to question 3. Question 3, how are LLM NPC AI issues like hallucinations, lack of focus, or immersion-breaking dialogue being addressed with the industry? Well, there's multi-pass prompts. That's one solution that handles a great deal of that. Basically, you run the AI solution output through another AI, and the AI checks it to see if the response is appropriate, on point, etc., and corrects the AI if it isn't. So you can make sure the AI response is going to be good with another AI. There's knowledge graphs, which can kind of help double check the information that the LLM should be using, that the character should be privy to, things like that. And developing smarter and better LLMs. They're working on making them more effective, more compartmentalized, quantization, things like that. By advancing these technologies and the ways we do prompt engineering and training, we can create better systems, more robust systems, safer systems, easier to control systems, but still have intelligent, creative, powerful NPCs. And that's my presentation. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. This is Zachary Mars. Y'all have a great day.